couple of reasons why I'm doing this particular show. Number one, we might be in the shit, but we're not in the shit the same as South Africans are, because as I film this show, the South Africans are back down into a lockdown where drinking is illegal. The only way that South African producers are going to sell any wine is if we buy it. So I know that we did this at the beginning. I think back in possibly June or May, I made a big song and dance about this. Might have been later than that, I'm not sure. But cut a long story short, I have more viewers now, and I've always extolled the virtues of South African wine. They're ecologically sound. They do what they can for the environment. They're very good about the ethics these days. It's a real kind of backlash to the horrid experiences that maybe black wine growers and field farmers would have felt in the 70s and 80s. Things are really cool down there now, but also the exchange rate is so bad because of the tangentopoli they've got, this unbelievably corrupt government, that you can go there expensive on a plane, but when you get there, what an incredible place to visit. So when all this stuff is over, it's one of the first places which is on my list to go back and revisit, South Africa. And the winelands are, if you're into this sort of thing and you like my show, truly the most remarkable holiday that you could ever buy. Yeah, just, ask me questions. Lowercase Vinesack, lowercase Drinks Coach UK. Ask me questions on social media about where you should go, where you should stay. I'd like to help people out there, and I'd like to help out the South African wine growers. Here we've got a wine grower which is probably less exposed than some financially. It's owned by British American Tobacco. It's called Vergelegen. Vergelegen. Shout out to one of the righteous winemakers of all time, André van Rensberg, who's been there not since the year dot, but since Martin Minot moved on. Andre has been winemaker there since he was a young lad, really, but has produced some of the finest. And I know if Keith Prothero ever watches this show, which I doubt he ever does, he will agree with me, some of the finest blended Bordeaux-style wines that South Africa has ever produced. If you try Vergelegen's flagship red 2001, you'll understand what I mean. It tastes as good as any Bordeaux I've ever tasted. And he has continued to make beautiful wines which just need a bit of time. Their wines are age-worthy. What's wonderful about his releases are he's in no hurry to release the new vintages. These wines are brought in by a company called Johnny Fells. Shout out to you boys and girls. And yeah, they're available widely. I go online, you'll find them everywhere. These wines are the Reserve range. Thank you very much, Laura Sullivan, for sending them to me. I'm very, very grateful. I didn't have anything else for a show today, so I thought, first of all, I'd talk about 4 important varieties, but also talk about Vergelegen and André van Rensberg. Now, if you're going there as a tourist to South Africa and you go to what is half of a much larger estate called the Morgensteer Estate, one half is owned by an Italian who used to be a textile broker, selling fine cashmere wool to, Karl Lagerfeld and House of Dior and all sort of people. He now makes incredible olive oil and incredible wines in his own right. The other half of the estate is the Vergelegen end, where there's this very strange winery. It's almost like a hole drilled into the side of a mountain. It's all very space-aged and wonderful to see. It's extraordinary. It's surrounded by this amphitheatre of orange and grey rock. It's the most extraordinary place to see on the Sundowner. Down at the bottom, there's a very fine restaurant. There's a good bistro, which is better value. It's one of the most widely visited tourist attractions in the whole of of Cape Town, or the Cape Winelands. Quite an extraordinary joint. And it used to belong to, I keep on getting wrong which one it is. It's either Adrian or Simon van der Stel, who was the son of, or the original governor of the Dutch East India Company, who went to South Africa, and it was his private estate. Hundreds and hundreds of acres of pure paradise. That's where it all started, folks. Also, Constantia was the other big estate. Yeah, my history is hazy, but it's the most wonderful place, and you have to visit, because you get to see one of the oldest houses in the most wonderful Cape Dutch style, all original furniture, beautiful gardens, great restaurants, amazing wine, the whole caboodle, kit and caboodle, and your 25-minute drive out of Cape Town. You might as well just get a taxi, go there, have lunch, come back. The wines are extraordinary. and I've loved Andre's wine since day one. I've known Andre for a very long time, mutually through a friend, Nick de McMahon, who used to be head buyer at Asda, one of my best friends. We both know Andre, and I've had the odd beer with the chap. Okay, so what we've got here, we've got the Reserve Sauvignon Blanc, the Reserve Chardonnay, the Reserve Merlot, and the Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon. So without further ado, now we're already 5 minutes in, let's talk about these wines. They're all special. That's all I've got to say. They're from unusual vintages. This is 2018. 2018 was a fiercely dry, drought, molten hot year. Not that you'd know, because I've just drunk this wine and I've just absolutely adored it. Yes, it's a little riper than normal, but this wine is one of the Sauvignon Blancs in South Africa which speaks so closely of Puy-Fumé and Sancerre, compared to almost all of the Sauvignon Blancs in South Africa, that, I mean, I worship this wine. It comes from a very, very special vineyard right on top of the Vergelegen Estate, overlooking Somerset West. It's right on the ridge where the wind howls through from the sea. And that wind creates windburn and chill, produces very, very hardy vines. And that vineyard is called the Schaapenberg vineyard. And it's one of the most prized Sauvignon Blanc vineyards in the whole of South Africa. It makes wonderful, wonderful wine. That's all I'm saying for now, other than the fact that this is the Reserve 2018, so it's already 2 years old. Quite pale in colour. Oh. It has a smell, I think 2018 was a little riper than some of, almost a smell of super premium Californian Sauvignon Blanc. I mean that in a good way. Like Mondavi Reserve Sauvignon Blanc. It has a smell of pink grapefruit. There's a ripeness to it. There's a ripe touch. But also, there's still this smoking, chalky, minerally overtone to the drink, which makes it really kind of fit in with the icons of great Sauvignon Blanc, whether that's the finest wines in New Zealand or the finest wines in the Loire or Bordeaux. It really sits in there nicely. If this wine had been in wood, I imagine it would have tasted in this particular ripeness something like Chateau La Louvière or Chateau Fusel, some super premium Grave or Pessac Léognan white wine from Bordeaux. If you go back to my Bordeaux shows, you'll see that I'm raving about a few of those wines. I think I even taste Chateau La Louvière 2013, I think it was. Beautiful, beautiful wine. Just search it for my shows from earlier last year. But what a drink. Okay, these wines priced retail between £15 and £20, a lot of them. So it's an £18 wine. We're not fucking around. But it's a very, very fine Sauvignon Blanc indeed. It says here, Anno 1700. So that would be then Adrian van der Stel, I think. Okay. Next wine. Victoria Moore, if you're watching. Both people might know Victoria Moore as the wine writer for the Daily Telegraph. Fantastic palate and a very dear friend of mine. We both agree this is probably the best wine on earth to go with roast chicken. Many a dinner I've had with her eating a roast chicken which has been rubbed in rose harissa paste or just with some rice or just regular roast chicken stuffed. South African Chardonnay has the ripeness level and the unctuous level, but also has the fresh lemony zing to go with that whole thing of perfect free-range chicken, and all you can smell is the lime you've shoved up its arse and half a head of garlic, and the smell of garlic and lime. It's in the wine. It really, really is. This wine is quite pale considering that it's a barrel fermented Chardonnay. Again, 2018. Ferociously warm vintage. Not that you'd know. They're obviously picking early. Maybe slightly less succulent and more muscular. Looks like a wine that probably needs to calm the shit down a little bit. 2 or 3 years in. Feels like you've just met it in a pub at closing time and it's been in a fight. It just needs to chill its jets a little bit. And that wine, as a lot of the really concentrated, fantastic Chardonnays from 2018 appear in South Africa, probably needs an extra year or two over previous vintages like 17, certainly 15, which was a delicious drink straight out of the box. I did mention back when I did the Bancroft show, where I did a mixed case, a lockdown mixed case. We did a wine called Ataraxia from Kevin Grant, 2018 Ataraxia, absolutely stunning wine. This is very much in the same ilk of finesse and concentration. Anyway, so we've got Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. For those people that are watching the show going, let's talk about them. Sauvignon Blanc is a great variety which makes wines which are very aromatic in a green way. They're aromatic like the smell of grass, green gage, maybe fresh apple. In the palate, when you put them in your mouth, they tend to taste quite sharp, quite lean, quite fresh and tangy. Like drinking a can of lemonade, like puckeringly clean and refreshing. Very refreshing wine. This wine's a little broader and richer than that. May have seen a tiny amount of wood, I don't know, but certainly some lees aging where the dead yeast in the wine get to the bottom of the tank, just to give the wine a bit more thickness and texture. This wine is a Chardonnay, and Chardonnay is kind of the opposite of Sauvignon Blanc. If Sauvignon Blanc's like this, up and down, Chardonnay is kind of sideways. It's got more background flavour. It's more rounded. Round is probably the wrong word because you can have incisive, high-acid Chardonnays too, but they tend to kind of be a bit more kestrel, a bit bigger, a bit more kind of creeping round the back. They kind of catch up on you where Sauvignon Blanc tends to be kind of straight between the eyes, throw a dart, samurai sword. This is more like setting a fire underneath your door. Takes time to come round. But I must say, for $17.95, there are very few Chardonnays in the world that I'd rather drink than this. And judging by how good this is, I cannot wait to try the 2019. The 2019 Chardonnays I've tasted thus far have been so stunning. I really can't wait to try that. So Laura, as soon as the 2019's here, please send it to me. I'm dying to try it. Okay, moving on to the reds. As you can see, they only do Bordeaux varieties. Somebody actually said, why don't you call them varietals? I'll tell you why. Because varietal is an adjective. These are varietal wines because they're made with different varieties. This is a Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Merlot, Cabernet. Sauvignon's a variety, Chardonnay's a variety. They are varietal wines. I imagine it's probably the Americans that are knackering the English language again. But there we go. They're varieties, not varietals. They're varietal wines. They're made varietally, but they're varieties. Okay. This is Vergelegen Reserve Merlot. Merlot is famously a difficult red variety to produce. When people talk about Merlot, they always talk about wines from Pomerol, Saint-Emilion, the right bank of Bordeaux, and somehow there's some magic there that just doesn't seem to translate anywhere else. It's wrong to say nowhere else because there are exceptions. There are always one or two wines that are very special. But there aren't many regions where you go, oh, I drink the Merlots from there. They're amazing. Where does one start? North Island, New Zealand Merlot is very nice. But they make a tiny amount. Washington State Merlot, delicious. Tiny amounts. There are some famous Merlots in California from Mount Verde. I'm thinking people like Duckhorn. They make a reasonable amount, but they are mega money, right? So, yeah, South Africa, particularly Stellenbosch and a bit further south where we are here, they really do make Merlot with texture. Merlot is more about texture and toothsomeness and a joyful, succulent suppleness than they are about any specific smell. If you try and force them one way, they tend to fight back. And one of the reasons why Merlot isn't really seen that often is because Merlot isn't very rarely sold as a single variety. Merlot is mixed with Cabernet Franc. Even if it's only 5%, that makes a massive difference to a lot of the wines in the right back of Bordeaux, whether it's Castillon, Saint-Emilion, sorry, it goes the other way, Castillon, Saint-Emilion, Pomerol, Allon de Pomerol, Fronsac, whatever. So, let's have a look at the colour. So this wine is current release. It's 5 years old. Bravo, André. André is still selling us wines when he thinks they're ready, which is fantastic. You get that from Rioja, don't you? Rioja is released when they think it's ready. If you buy a wine from Australia or from France most of the time, it's the current release and you have to hold on to it yourself. Very difficult, very tempting. But here we've got a wine that's 5 years old from the self-styled super vintage of 2015. Most of the winemakers in South Africa will tell you how special that was in Stellenbosch, particularly for Cabernet Sauvignon, and was certainly considered to be the best vintage since 2009, certainly. But if you like your wines elegant, you like your wines to be in a form of complexity and elegance, you like the way that André likes to make his wines, he may beg to differ. And 2014, much more elegant. 2009, 2017, I think is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful for Cabernet and Merlot. If you speak to Iselle van Blerk at KWV, she'll tell you 2018 is hugely underrated. One of her favourite vintages. Certainly got the guts. So, wow. What's nice about this is when I pick up a glass of Merlot from the New World, it usually smells of plums or fresh soft fruits, a bit Shiraz-y, because it doesn't have any development. This wine, I pick it up. Wow. It's actually got some of that. There's a smell that I want from my Merlot, from marginal, not overripe Merlot. If you get a rack of lamb and you're cutting it into individual chops and you smell the pink of the lamb, it's meaty, but it's not meaty. It's not lammy. It's just the smell of sweet meat before it goes through the Maynard reaction, or whatever, Maillard reaction on a barbecue and goes all caramelized and sweet. It's kind of, it's the smell of the portent of a barbecue before you put your steak onto a barbecue, onto a braai, or your lamb chops, your Karoo lamb chops before you put on a braai. That you know that smell of all the herbs that the lamb has eaten, and maybe that rosemary that's been marinated in. You get the smell, this excitement as it's cooking on the barbecue. Merlot fits that beautifully, especially if it's 5 or 6 years old, which this is. 17.95, yes sir. Absolutely delicious wine for £18. Absolutely fantastic. I was looking up online. I wasn't sure if this specific wine was there, but I know that slurp.co.uk usually do a lot of these wines. They might do all 4, they might do a few. If you can't find it at Slurp, have a look for other South African specialists. I'll put some on the list below, but I'll definitely list someone who sells it online or otherwise. Moving on to the last wine. This is, Vergelegen Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon, South Africa, 2014. So 2014 was a lot cooler, more rainy, but look at the colour. Wonderful concentration. Beautiful. I remember drinking 2014 Syrah from André, and it was rather delicious. I don't think it makes much, but wonderfully peppery, really classic. So, we're talking about Sauvignon Blanc, linear, crisp, zingy. Chardonnay, a bit more loud, a bit more rounded, a lot more going on, sort of more complete, if you like. Merlot, easy, succulent, nicely perfumed on the nose when you drink it, just kind of drenches your palate in flavour without too much tannin. Now we're on to Cabernet Sauvignon, which is the grown-up big brother of Merlot, which is more structured. There's going to be more tannin. There's going to be, the French call les plus grandes épaules, plus charpenté, more bigger shoulders, more structured, more carpentered. Wow, that's a lot of wine. That's about 20 quid, I guess. That was £20 roughly. It's going to be between 17 and 20. It's got a real sense of cedar. It tastes like a young oak medoc, which is quite delicious because we're talking similar money here. But it's nice to know that if you like your Bordeaux's, there are wines in South Africa which really echo those flavours. And I think André does that better than virtually anyone else in the country. Would I keep that? I'd certainly decant it and serve it with a steak. Keep it for another couple of years. It's starting to attenuate and get more svelte. Like a Paul Smith suit. There's no slack. It's very nice, but detailed. Lovely acidity. Refreshing. A good drink. So Laura, thank you. You filled a hole in this week's Drinks Coach itinerary. Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Merlot, Cabernet. All from Vergelegen, all reserve, between 15 and 20 quid. If you're going to have something at home this Sunday, whether it's chicken, whether it's fish, whether it's lamb or beef, there's something for everyone. See you next time.